Hello, hello, everybody. We are back for another career and spirituality conversation. So for those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Julie Pone, and I support spiritual seekers having a career experience to reconcile what they do for a living with who they are as a soul. And today it's my great honor to have Thomas Legrand with me. Hi, Thomas. How are you today?
Hello, Julie. Very good. Good to
Yeah.
be with you.
And at least one name that I'm sure I'm going to be pronouncing properly.
Yeah, indeed, it's unusual to see it pronounced that way in middle of an English sentence. Thanks.
Yeah. So before we jump in, let's have our usual grounding. So for those who can, just close your eyes and focus on the weight of your body, on your seat, and the weight of your feet on the ground. And for a second, let's press our feet on the ground just to acknowledge the presence of the earth underneath us and giving it a little thank you for being here and allowing us to have this human experience. And then bringing our focus back into our heart and visualizing, imagining as if our breath is flowing in and out through the heart. And just breathing a little bit deeper and a little bit slower than we usually do. And I'll be counting for about a minute for us. Let's just have a couple of deep breaths. And beautiful. So let's bring ourselves back and slowly get ourselves into the conversation, opening the eyes, and welcome back. Ta-da! Thomas, thank you so much for being here with us. And so for our audience, Thomas is a wisdom seeker, social scientist, sustainability practitioner, and the author of a book called Politics of Being that we're going to talk about quite a bit today. So I'm excited to know more about all this. And I'm going to start with my first question as usual. Thomas, what's your relationship to spirituality? What does it mean to you? Maybe your spiritual path?
Thank you, Julie.
Yeah.
I was born, raised in a Christian family, not so religious, but they noticed my tendency for mysticism quite at an early age. You know, when I was entering churches, etc. Was asking at Easter when I was very young. You know, are we going to see Jesus or this kind of of questions? Somehow it faded a little bit out as a teenager until I really reconnected during a student exchange in Mexico when I was 22. I met some shamans and recognized, I think, for the first time, a real spiritual path and fully committed to it and put it at the center of my life and reorganized my life accordingly. So that was Mexican shamanism, or the path of the spiritual warrior, as they call it. And I stayed 3 years in Mexico to learn from this path as much as I could. Then I come back to France. To me, it was really eye-opening experience, and I of course understood that there was a lot of spiritual truths to find in many different traditions. So I look at a lot of different paths.
Mm-hmm.
I think the work on energetic arts, Tai Chi Chuan, Qigong, associated with Taoism also a little bit was important for me at some point, and I'm still and is still important. And in 2015, I moved to live next to a Buddhist community, Plum Village in the southwest of France. That is a monastery of Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. Next to we have been living with my family.
Okay. And does it mean that you're practicing Buddhism?
Yeah, I would say we are practicing mindfulness, in
Okay.
everything we
Yeah.
do, both sitting, walking, eating, and even listening, working. And yeah, I mean, I'm very inspired by the Buddhist teachings as explained by Thich Nhat Hanh, but I prefer not to call myself a Buddhist because I
Yeah.
feel still very much nourished by different traditions. And there's a sense that, if you're a Buddhist and you're not something else. So I prefer to assume that I'm still very nourished by different wisdom traditions. But yes, I practice mindfulness during a lot of my time. Yeah.
Okay, so already I'm super interested in, knowing a little bit more about, the path of the spiritual warrior and things, but I think it's probably going to come back again through the next, the rest of the conversation. So I'm going to steer us straight away first to your professional path, so your career trajectory, and how your spiritual journey has influenced maybe your career choices.
Sure. So I studied management first
Okay.
at a bachelor degree, and then political science.
Yeah.
And that's where I did in Sciences Po in Paris.
Okay.
And then that's where I went to Mexico as part of a student exchange. And the shaman I met, who became sort of a teacher for me, was a doctor and a shaman. And I could see really a unity in his life, in his work, no, and that was something I immediately recognized and understood that I should also, if I put my spiritual path at the center of my life, I should also align my professional work with that. So to me, at that time, that was this spiritual journey was also a deep reconnection with Mother Earth, and I was already, recognizing that this will be maybe the most important issue of our times. And but I didn't have any educational background on that.
Okay.
So I came back to France for a semester to finish my master's degree and took a few courses, additional courses, so that I could get a major in international development rather than international trade. Probably I would have graduated otherwise.
Okay.
So then I went back to Mexico,
Yeah.
and I started to work on microfinance, to bring together, my management, business administration expertise with this international development work and being a work of service. And later on, I did a PhD in ecological economics, studying forest conservation in Costa Rica. So that was, my way to be able to really work for the earth. And this is what I've done for the last, I mean, during 10 years, I would say probably. After my PhD, I needed my PhD in, it went from 2007 to 2012, I think, or
Okay.
13.
Yeah.
And at that time, I started working also in parallel, doing consultancy with international development organizations, UN organizations, especially on forest conservation, climate change, green finance.
Yeah.
And I've done that mainly until 2020.
Okay.
And since 2020, I've been leading the development of a new initiative, which feels very aligned for me, which is called the Conscious Food Systems Alliance, whose secretariat I manage, and which is based in the United Nations Development Program. So we're bringing basically this inner development agenda into food systems to support their transformation.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. I think we'll, get a little bit more information about that as well. I'm curious, you started with management. Is that what you said, right? And,
Yes, yes.
and at the,
Economy, management, business administration, depending how you translate
and
it. Yeah.
and at the time, like, was it a choice, or were you genuinely, like, passionate? If if it's possible to be passionate about management, I don't know.
What's the answer?
Yeah. Or were you following a path that was, like, maybe a bit conditioned by, okay, this is what, after the back I'm meant to do good studies, and what good studies are there, something like that?
It was not really a passion. So I ended up a bit there, not exactly knowing what I wanted to do. I think, as a young person, I think I was interested in many things,
Mhm.
but couldn't really see, like, really, really find a passion. I think something I would be worth committing to.
Yeah.
I think somehow the economy side of it then grew up also because I understood that that was the key, that was the main system to transform,
Mhm.
especially for dealing with the environmental crisis.
Mhm.
So I think there was a rather genuine interest in understanding how the world works
Yeah.
and what we can do about our current problems. And I think I studied economics for that reason. But yeah, it was not really management was what I did while before finding something that I would really love to do.
Okay. Yeah. So it was like following the tracks of, like, uh,
Yeah,
a lot of us follow when we're after studies,
yeah,
and so, like, the first pivotal point was really your immersion in nature, and that's the first occurrence that this actually influenced the choice, your study choice for afterwards. Is that
yeah,
right?
definitely. I mean, I would say my encounter with native spirituality in Mexico,
Yeah.
and which really had this important dimension about reconnecting with the earth. Yes.
And can you tell us more about this native spirituality? Because, we probably know a lot about some, mindfulness, this sort of things, but that's very, very specific. So how was it, and what do they believe in, and yeah, how did that impact you?
Sure. So I think on the one side, there was this really deep, profound, I would say, loving and respectful connection with Mother Earth. That is, in general, were was really moving me. And yeah, that's on the one side. The Mexican shamanism, this Toltec tradition, is
Mhm.
quite specific. The teachings that I was receiving were close to what you can read, for example, in the books of Carlos Castaneda, who talks about this path of the spiritual warrior,
Yeah.
which I would say brings to the front the question of your intention
Mhm.
as a way to affect the reality around you, your own reality,
Okay.
and also I would say as an important energetic dimension. So it's a lot about how do you can recollect and gather and strengthen your own energy,
Yeah.
and this energy is what can give you power, and you're using that power as a way to liberate yourself. I would say that that's the search
Yeah.
of these people. And in what is interesting in that tradition also is that they often work together as a group of people, so that they can sum up their energies to be able to have transformative experience that they could not necessarily generate alone. We had practices. I did a lot of sweat lodge in Mexico. You call them temazcal. So these are kind of traditional sauna, we could say, or hammam in a hut
Yeah.
that symbolize mother's womb or even mother earth's womb, and is a ritual of cleansing, purification, also a kind of meditation, because at some point, if you do it very hard, you
Yeah.
have to let go of your thinking, because otherwise it's hard to keep up with the heat inside. And yeah, it's a ritual of being somehow reborn somehow.
Mm.
And also nature's work, being connected with nature, and I would say through our intentions, things happen in the wild, and you just notice, that kind of possibilities, I would say. Yeah.
It's interesting you said, like, the natives, like they're cultivating their energy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's it just kind of came to my mind that it's a way to harness energy to give ourselves power, and that's exactly what we're trying, that what we're looking for for physical energy to get the world going.
Mm-hmm.
Harness
Mm-hmm.
energy, and where would we harness it from? Are we taking it from the earth, or I'm quite interested in physics, and
Mm-hmm.
and wouldn't it be great, like I wonder, when are we going to be able to extract that energy from the ether, I mean from the field of energy. So but anyway, I digress. But I don't know, as we were speaking about that, I was like, oh, that's a interesting parallel. I don't know if that's really, if that really applies, like if, as exactly what you mean, but that's what kind of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think there is definitely, this issue about, taking energy from the earth, and there are some specific places where it is more available,
Yeah.
sacred sites, for example. And yeah, I think there is a wonderful technique practice that we use in this path. It's called recapitulation,
Okay.
and there's a book on it which I recommend it very much.
Okay.
And it's basically about basically these shaman, they notice that as we are dying,
Uh-huh.
that's what we do. We view all of our lives in one moment,
Uh-huh.
and they understood it as a way to recover our own energy before moving to a different plane. And they understood that we don't need to wait before we die to do that. We can recover that energy already now
Yeah.
by mainly, I would say, remembering all of our life, and especially our interaction with other people.
Yeah.
And there's a technique to, mainly through our intention, we could say, let's say, breathing in, I'm recovering my energy, what belongs to me, and breathing out, I leave what doesn't belong to me, but to the other people, to this other person.
Mm.
So that is a very important practice in this path, and I find it very, very effective.
Okay.
For example.
Is it something that you would be like, even to nowadays, practicing on a regular basis? Is it something that we're meant to think about regularly, to do regularly, or once a year, or is it a
Yeah,
special
not,
occasion,
I
or?
would say not in its purest form, because
Okay.
it takes a little bit of preparation, etc., in its purest form. But yes, I mean, differently, I think in general, it's very important to recapitulate one's own life. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, when we, let's say, travel to some holidays and we have a long journey in the car,
Yeah.
I use that sometimes with my wife just to recap what has happened over the last few months. And I found out, this, and some people do it, even every day. And it allows for the mind to really put everything into its place. And because sometimes, we go through our lives and things, experience, um, mm, how to say, experience happens, but we don't have really the space to
What?
digest it.
Sorry, I missed that word. We experience.
Experiences happen,
Oh yeah. Okay.
but we
So
don't have the space to
yeah.
digest them, right? And so that they can really find their own. So I have noticed that it has helped me. It has helped my mind to
Mm-hmm.
feel more, everything is in its place, everything is settled, rather than going through all these experiences without the time to really think about them and let them, sink
Yeah.
in and find their own places. Yeah.
That's interesting, because just recently I was listening, and with my goldfish memory, I couldn't even tell you where I heard it, but a study that was done comparing the effect of remembering, of going through, let's say, for problem solving. I think the people in the study were meant to come up with a challenge that they have in their life, and those who were brought through a process where they were looking at the past, so like really in their mind, going through all the steps that led to the problem had much better solutions and were able to actively solve the problems versus the people who were brought to a process where they were just visualizing the outcome that they want. Because I think it's something that, maybe in the spiritual, community, like the positive thinking, just visualize the outcome. And so that was a lot less efficient than just going through remembering all the steps and the chronology of the events that led to the issue that we are trying to solve. So that's interesting, because that's, it seems like there is a similar idea. So like there is value in getting back and having a recap of what's been happening. So yeah, that's interesting. And so also it means that we are not necessarily aware that not everyone will be familiar with that idea that we're giving energy away with some interactions. What does it mean to kind of get back our energy from an event or a person?
There are some relationships, for example, let's say in a couple, for example, if there is codependency, and sometimes a person can, leave herself a little bit as a victim, and the other one is the helper, and that create a flow of energy from one to the other. And the person with the helper, or the how do you say, the savior, for example, right? It's the savior is an archetype, right? And the victim is also an archetype. So that's often in a relationship you have that kind of function, and there is an energetic exchange in that relationship, which goes both ways, but is often unbalanced and not very good for the two people, right? So this kind of work, for example, can help both recover their own energy, what belongs to them and what doesn't belong to the other. And of course, you have also, toxic relationship. You have some people, you spend an hour with them and then you feel more tired, no? There are some people, you are spending an hour with them and you feel energized, right? And, there is some experience also that leaves that were a bit, I don't know, harmful, leaves some sadness or some anger or any other of these emotions who are taking your energy out. And by processing, these interactions, you can recover that energy.
Yeah, it's such a cool insight that there is a way to get that energy back just by without the need of something very sophisticated, just kind of reviewing the events for ourselves. Is there a little bit of while you're reviewing the events, is there a little bit of a in our mind twisting, like changing a little bit, imagining that we've reacted differently, or not even?
Not so much. It's not about so much about understanding or changing. It's really about what you do is you look at the event, you try to remember, very well, and you can think about the details of the place, etc. So that can really connect you to that memory, and then you view it from the outside, then you leave it from the inside, and then you view it again from the outside. And I would say you can notice, specific patterns, etc. And then there is another practice, which is, while you notice specific patterns, can you exercise yourselves to do things differently, right? Which is a practice that they call of not doing, which is also a way, let's say, that our energy is trapped into some specific, let's say, structures of our being. And by doing things that we are not used to do, we kind of creating more openness in our energy field, and so that it can, flow, I would say, more abundantly, I could say. So that's another practice of not doing, doing things that we are not used to, which takes us a little bit out of ego control to experience and other things, and be able to flow then with life more fluidly.
Okay. As you're describing it, how I represent it in my mind is as if we're when we are always doing the same thing, is like our energy field is getting stale because it's also predictable, and so doing things we are not used to do is like somehow shaking our vibrational state, so it's more open for something new, for new.
Exactly. And just, just doing, I mean, the more you do something new, the more you're used to do new things. That can work, that bring this kind of agility into your being and can open new ways also for other things. No? So it's a good practice. And, in my, after I come back, while I was doing my PhD, for example, I was doing management consulting in a relatively big company in the business center of Paris. And I was, taking the metro, etc. And for me, it was a very different energy than how I've been in Mexico, for example. And I decided to take that path also because of that practice of non-doing. I wanted to experience a different way of being. And non-doing for me would be first to wear different types of clothes. In that case, more suits, etc., and be in a different kind of energy. But also, for example, if I go through the metro in the morning to my work, at times I was, at the beginning especially, I was taking different routes every day. Just just to make it different. And it doesn't have to. And that's also a way, also a little bit to put into question our reasons that would ask, what do you do these stupid things? And it's also a way to exercise ourselves to do things that our reason does not necessarily validate. So as a way to escape a little bit the dictatorship of our reason.
Okay. Yeah, and so it doesn't need to be extravagantly different. It could be just like taking different routes to go from A to B in our everyday life. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and that's interesting because that's a concept that for people who are maybe not not into energy or maybe even spirituality. I mean, that's very personal development, getting out of our comfort zone. It's sort of an obvious thing that would get us maybe less risk averse, and so more keen on getting places. But yet it's also a spiritual practice from Mexico, from the natives in Mexico, but in a different, maybe like a package in a different way. The only thing I would say is like non-doing is a little bit misleading because it feels like, okay, so non-doing is like just kind of staying still, but no, it's the opposite. It's doing, like it's actually doing, but doing different.
Exactly, it's not doing what is your usual doing, let's say.
Okay.
But I have a great example if you want to hear. I mean,
Yes.
I did it also once with my wife. We lived in Paris at that time, but we decided for one day to dress up as tourists, but like the real tourists, the one with I love Paris and taking photos in these. And we went through all the big touristic places, but we were a little bit like how do you say caricature? How do you say?
Oh yeah. Yeah, caricature.
Yeah, so people were a bit looking at us and a bit laughing or feeling, we were dressed so badly, with a bad taste, etc. I was putting myself into, let's say, an American of the Midwest, let's say, and for me, it was quite a transformative experience because of the whole day, and I could see the how people were looking at me, and I really realized that there was nothing wrong with that people I was representing, no. So it also even changed my mind on how I should look at people, no. And yeah, so that was a nice transformative, I would say, experience to do.
Yeah, so that's a very easy kind of exercise for anyone. And fun. Yeah, that's interesting. I used to do some like rejection proof exercises as with a meetup with a group of people. We would go and have a list of create like really obnoxiously weird things to do, or ask for a stranger to borrow 200 euro, or like screaming in the street and that type of thing. And it's a little bit like the first step is a little bit scary, but then it feels really liberating. And yes, I agree that it would, if anything, it was really giving me energy, you know, like you feel more alive in doing these totally unexpected things. But yeah, no, I like that. So is there any other maybe transformative experience, or maybe even more than that, some I don't know, revelations or that you had while you were in Mexico, or like being, I don't know, in a sweat lodge, anything that comes to mind that was particularly.
Yeah, I mean, in my book, maybe I mentioned that one when I was in an indigenous community in the mountain of Mexico, in a very remote place, and there was a canyon, and on the other side there was a forest. And I said, at some point I was looking at the forest, and at some point I could feel as if I was on the other side. So I could feel the energy of the forest within me, or me within the energy of the forest. So that was a very powerful experience.
Mhm.
And when I look back at it, and to me that was really uh, it symbolized, you know, my connection to the earth, and which is above all a connection to the forest. So when I, after that, you know, when I was looking for how to work on that, and I did my PhD, I did it on forest conservation. So at that time, you know, there was this kind of, it was obvious for me that when I was talking about the nature, the earth, it was really the forest. And I worked on, forest conservation in tropical countries for a long time, including with the UN. And yeah, and I've come to understand also, you know, why is that? Uh, I've come to understand I have a soul connection to the forest. I believe in reincarnation, and I believe I've evolved in past lives, including as animals or trees, in from the forest. So, and I can notice even in the way I've done, even the way I built my career, I would say, is really this kind of construction energy, which is you could say the wood energy, let's say in Chinese medicine, this construction energy. And I've built, you know, step by steps things that I needed to grow the tree, build different roots, you could say, that now are allowing that tree to grow.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the foundations and the different roots that, okay. And so that allows the trunk to kind of grow strong. And now do you also feel like, you know, there are somehow branches in different direction, or?
Yes, well, the tree energy is a very creative energy,
Yeah.
that of the vegetables, let's say. So trees want to grow in many different ways, and they need also to focus, otherwise, and to bring fruits, right? Otherwise, they can lose a lot of energy in growing wood in different directions.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I mean, and you know, in my as you have introduced me, I think, you know, for I'm starting to see, you know, really the all my life, you know, coming together and centered on spirituality, and especially in my work, in my and through my book. So it's all coming nicely together, but it has built on different aspects of my life. You know, one is spirituality, the other one is science and my PhD work, which also nourished that reflection on the politics of being. And finally, you know, also to be able to be practical on how to implement that. And my work as a sustainability professional has allowed me to do that. And I feel, you know, I've been also working with a lot of different type of institutions, you know, both let's say governments, private sector, academia, NGO. And to me, that has been also a practice of being able to move myself in different contexts. So that has been also a practice. And yeah, I see now that it's all coming together to support a change of paradigm and bring that message, you know, bring a spiritual dimension to the work we're doing on sustainability, let's say, and social change.
So it really sounds like the forest chose you, and you stepped up. And as you were working in forest conservation, your spiritual connection to to the forest, to the trees, did you sometimes draw directly on some instinctive connection, or nearly, okay, I'm going to say it like I want to say it. Did you happen to channel the energy of the forest, of the trees, in order to make decisions in your work?
Yeah, definitely. I would say so I've been traveling a lot for my work, and each time I go to a country, a place, I'm honoring, the spirit of that place or that nation, and asking for guidance, asking to learn from their wisdom, but also putting me in service for what needs to be done. And I definitely, felt that it, being used, being in service. And for example, in my book, I mentioned once in an Amazonian country I was working with, and we had a big meeting. We have been waiting for a long time with the Council of Ministers to present our work. And my supervisor that should have spoken in that meeting somehow was not able to come because his flight took off a few hours before it should have, which, I've never heard about such thing of the flight
Oh my
taking
God.
off before. So he missed his connection and he was stuck somewhere else. So I had to speak myself. And that was a day I do some, offering also to the places. So I went that morning to do that offering, bringing a crystal to the Amazonian forest. And then on my way back, I was asking, what should I say, etc. And I took a rather very how do you say, solemn tone while speaking, which was a little bit out of place, but it looked like a bit like if I was almost as in a ceremony. And I told them, there's every nation wants to be the first into something, and you have the most forest cover, and so that's really an opportunity, etc. And I felt what I somehow I wanted to touch something very deep in themselves, which I could call maybe the soul of nation somehow. And so that, this meeting happened and kind of never heard much after. But some months after, the country finally decided to take a very ambitious decision, announcing it will keep its forest cover at that level, which was a big thing. And I can't tell whether I did make a difference in that meeting, but I could really feel that energy supporting me and me speaking on behalf of the forest, I would say, in that case.
Yeah, I can see that, as if the voice is not yours, like something else is kind of speaking through you, something
Yeah.
like that, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
that's fascinating. And so you have that strong connection and spiritual side, but you're also working in a tough, I mean, have to talk politics, politicians and representatives of, I guess, governments and institutions, where there might not be the same connection. Does it clash sometimes? How do you reconcile, and maybe even with the people that you work with that might be less connected? How do you navigate that with people who are more corporate? I'm going to say that out of a better word.
Yeah, of course, we need to adapt our language to different audiences and use a lot of the science. Now we have, more and more the science that show the importance of addressing mindsets, values, worldviews, and how certain human qualities and skills are important for sustainability. We have partnered with a leading scientist in that field to write a rationale for action report. So we really have a strong background in science, and yeah, we need to really adapt to different contexts. But I would say our job also is to make is a bit political in a way, is to create a space where it is fine to talk about this inner dimension, even spirituality, if that's how people experience it or name it. So just being able to make the case that we need to have this conversation, we need to look at these dimensions, has been very liberating for some of our members who often are a bit alone and alienated in their own workplace. And for us to us creating for them that place where and it's a UN organization, so that brings legitimacy to this field, and for them to be able to connect with like-minded people, to find the resources, the science, the language, and opportunities for collaboration is very useful. And I think I can say that what we have found is that there are much more people ready for that than we would thought, because it is taboo in a lot of our organization. But once you make that possible and say, that it is fine and indeed we need to have these conversations, you'll find there's probably much more people that are ready for that than one could assume.
I like that you're saying that. I've experienced that a little bit, because in my own journey, where at some stage I wasn't so confident in talking about the spiritual aspect of my work or what I wanted to do. And then I realized that, because people, especially like in France, would tell me like, but are you not, are you talking about these things? Like, in networking events or stuff like that. And I realized that once I started to own it, and I was the one opening the door for it, more often than not, like the other person nearly feels like relieved and excited that, oh, so it's okay, I can talk about that. There is someone I can talk about these things. So it looks like we are all isolated in our de notre côté. We are all on each. Damn it. But that's when I try to mix French and English. Yeah, so we're isolated in our little space, thinking that no one else is gonna relate, and when all it takes is just to open up, and then we realize that other people are also equally interested in, well, in that case, spirituality, but I guess it could be something else.
Yeah, I could say the system is keeping us isolated, and there is even some scientific evidence of that, and not only from the very specific, spiritual angle, but what I present in my book is that, we are run by a certain story, a certain worldview, where people are assumed to be egoistic and only pursue their own self-interest, for example. And there are, scientific evidence that this is not reflecting reality. It's very artificial, and it really limits us to come with the different models. And for example, you ask people what are their values, and then you ask people what are the values of others, and the values of others will be always less compassionate and more egoistic than the values of oneself. So we are maintained in this belief that we can't trust each other, that everyone is competitive and selfish, and that it's exaggerated belief, and it's maintained somehow by media and the way our societies are organized. So an important part, in this book of my work, is how we can change that narrative, framing institutions, human interactions, the way we convene in a different manner, so that other ways of being can be possible. And of course, one needs to start with ourselves, and being careful about what kind of even worldviews or assumptions we are validating through the way we speak, through our ideas, etc.
That's crazy. Like, I was literally just reading that a couple of days ago, that in the context of career, like, when you're asking people about what motivates them, in a context of getting promoted, they always point at something that's high on the Maslow's pyramid, but then when you ask them what do they think their co-workers' motivation is to get the same promotion, then suddenly they tend to say, well, it's probably about money, or kind of and so it's interesting. So you're just confirming that. Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah, so that means there is a potential to do things differently, but this potential is not activated. What our societies and our institutions activate are rather, a relative low potential or even negative values, but there is much more than we think. a potential for being able to come together in a very different way based on other values and narratives.
Yeah. So I guess it's a good, segue. Like I'd love for that we get more time about the book specifically and so politics of being. So instinctively we think, okay, being, like ways of being. So is it about starting to make decisions, like to start with the being first and the values that we want to see in the world before jumping on budgets and stuff like that? So tell us about it. Where did it originate? And I promise I'm gonna shut up.
Yeah, no, it's basically proposing a new bottom line from our societies, and I think the transformation we need to undergo is basically moving from having our economic growth to being. And I show that based on a lot of science that the real progress, the real well-being, comes from being, not from having. And there's a lot of strong evidence of that, and how we can organize societies to promote this collective flourishing. So I was basically looking for a wisdom-based or spiritual approach to development or politics, we could say. And I found in the Earth Charter this sentence which says, when basic needs have been met, human development is primarily about being more rather than having more. And as we said, I argue that even to meet basic needs, we need to be more so that we can also care more for one another, etc. So in this book, I define that, and this is based also on a new narrative, a new worldview for our human and social potential, based on a lot of new thinking, new discoveries in many scientific fields, and which move away from this, assumption of our human nature to be like the Homo economicus, who is only concerned by his own self-interest. Really, it's not, people who are really flourishing doesn't really think like that. And it shows that the most important part, I think, of the book is how to actually do it, how to organize society. So I have 9 chapters from childhood and family to education, health, work and organizations, food and agriculture, justice, governance, economy, etc., nature, how to organize society according to this new paradigm, this new being paradigm, and based almost exclusively on existing examples and with very concrete, very grounded, not necessarily the ones you would think as necessarily spiritual or something, but showing that all these different ways of organizing ourselves can really help us cultivate the best in ourselves, or most the highest human values and qualities.
I know that the book has incredible testimonials from famous people in science and spirituality, and so so far how has it been received, and what impact do you see it's having already, or are you hoping that it will have, that we will see something concrete changing in our society?
Yeah, well, I think, there has been discussion for already 10 years at the highest level, thinking about the UN, about a new development paradigm. So when we came in 2015 with the Sustainable Development Goals agenda, there was this discussion that we need a new development paradigm, and Bhutan even proposed to the UN to look at well-being or happiness as a new development paradigm. And I'm building also on that. So I do think we won't be able to go safely through the 21st century if we don't radically change the orientation of our lives, both at the individual level, but also at the collective level. So I do think we will at some point adopt, because it just makes, we would look backwards to it as common sense, like we should organize our societies in a way that promote collective flourishing. It's just common sense, but we are just trapped in this, worldview and all that goes with it, including, the competition among nations for more wealth, but also more powers through wealth, etc., that, prevent us somehow, limit. But I think there is a very strong case for that, and I think it will happen at some point. Yeah, I'm trying to, propose a vision that can be approached from different would say almost levels of consciousness. So there is a deep way of it, and there's some more shallow understanding of this agenda. So I propose, for example, to look also into wisdom traditions and spiritual practices, etc. But just also keeping it as the theory, can be very deep. But I'm also very grounded and looking only at what is existing now that we could leverage to make it happen. So there is this both dimension, and I think happiness, well-being would probably be the next vision for societies. And what I'm proposing is that we need also there are different ways different paths to well-being and happiness, and we need to adopt the one that is really anchored into that inner development, because we need to grow wiser human beings. We have grown so much of power in the next 2 centuries, but we have not grown the wisdoms we need to balance and make good use of this power. So we really need to understand that we can create this virtuous circle by which we collectively flourish, and we grow wisdom, and we use that wisdom to refine our institutions to grow even more that wisdom, that inner development. So that's a kind of virtuous circle that we would need to step in, but it's a deep insight. But that is, I think, making its way through societies little by little. Yeah.
Okay. No, yeah, I want are you optimistic? I mean, because, so it feels like, maybe especially right now that we're up against, it feels like the majority of us would be jumping on this bandwagon with much happiness. It's like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And yet what we are seeing in the world right now, it's so disheartening. And so hearing you being optimistic about some politics of being going places right now, I think it's important. Yeah.
And what I think a strong argument for that is that maybe the countries that are a little bit more advanced on this agenda, I think, are the countries that are performing better in the world right now, which are the European Nordic countries. You saw them, at the top of all social rankings, basically. And maybe they are implementing 20% of what I'm proposing, so it's not that much, but I think it shows that if we would implement that agenda, it's clear that we would create societies that completely outperform other societies. So, and also what I found is that coming from this kind of wisdom perspective, spiritual perspective, what the new paradigm, basically, I show that the new paradigms in many sectors, which to me are the recommended by the most intelligent people in these fields, are the ones that basically connect to this inner development agenda. So I think the rationale is very strong, and it's also possible that maybe not right away as an overarching vision for society we adopt politics of being, but it's making its way through societies, because there lies the solution to many of our problems. So people who are looking for solution in the field of education or health or justice or governance, somehow connect to that inner dimension, because we have gone so much in one direction that now all the solutions is on that side, on the being, not on the having or the doing, let's say.
It's like the pendulum, it needs to it's switching back.
For the paradigm, all these, all the way society is organized is operating from one paradigm that is not working anymore. So the solutions are on this alternative paradigm, and I show, because often we don't perceive it, I show the kind of inner spiritual dimension behind many of the solutions that are proposed. Yeah.
Okay. And so where can we get the book right now?
Sure. Well, you can check the website politicsofbeing.com, or you can find it on Amazon and many other platforms. There is a link on this website.
Okay, and I'll make sure to include the links, all the links for easy access.
Sure.
Would it be maybe eventually available in audio format, like on Audible or stuff like that? Or
Not yet. It will be published in French in February next year. with Robert Laffont, which is an important mainstream publisher. So yeah, maybe at some point we should talk about an audiobook. Would be good.
That's a very selfish question, I got to admit.
Okay. But there's a lot of materials. I have a YouTube channel, and there's a lot of materials there also.
Okay. Awesome. And so just, because I feel like there's so many more questions that, I would, love to ask, and it could be gone for another hour or 2 hours. But since we're going towards the end of our time together, is there anything that I haven't asked you, or that you would have loved to answer or address, or some last words that you feel are important for our audience to hear?
Yes, I think maybe just right now I'm sharing with really having been able to align quite beautifully, I would say, my spiritual life and my professional life, but just acknowledging the efforts and difficulties it took. But really, there is this sentence also I mentioned in my book, which coming from this Toltec tradition, it talks about, following our heart's path, I think. And because that's where the inspiration comes from, that's where the strength comes from. So I think this is what has guided me, and it has taken a while, but really recognizing that all these experience, also professional experience, was somehow useful to build something. But it takes quite a lot of determination and inspiration to be able to realize what I believe I've come for in this life. So maybe just to invite people to follow their calling, because I think that's what is really nourishing, and it's really worth it.
Yeah, if we were all somehow able to create our lives, our profession, true to our own nature and what the gifts that we have to offer, like the paradigm would be already like right. Well, there's no right or wrong, but your politics of being would already be
Exactly. No, the politics of being is really to allow, allow that to for everyone. And basically, I felt sometimes it was a bit of a struggle for me, and because society is not organized for that, which is a pity, because my own wish was for service. So it's just a pity that we cannot tap into this intrinsic motivation, which is, I think, is the nature of us all. It's just that society is not organized for that.
Yes, so yeah, let's get to work, and organize it in a different way. Thank you so much for being such a leader in that. Like, we need people like you, obviously, to to show us the way. I'm very honored that you spend the time with us, and maybe we'll do that again, in a little while, and see how things are moving. And is there a way that we can contribute? How can we contribute? Are you not creating a community as well to support the new paradigm that we can maybe tell people about?
Yeah, on politics of being, you can read the book, you can, talk to people about it. I'm on social media, you can repost that work. Yes, I'm connecting with a lot of people, trying to bring our work together. And maybe at some point I could create, a kind of structure for this community of politics of being. I've been very busy in the recent years and I feel the first step is to promote this book. But yes, at some point I think it would be good to create a community, and I have the vision for it, to be able also to, implement this agenda. And it's a big vision, so we need experts in many different fields and in many different places, so that we can collaborate to make it happen.
Okay, wonderful. So I'll share all the links to our community, like to our audience. And thank you so much again, Thomas, and to everyone else. Thank you for listening, and I shall see you next week for another career and spirituality conversation. Love you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.